Infostealers. First off, hi, my name is Will. I'm 23 years old, and I'm a pen tester for Bastion Security Group. Outside of work, I made Restellar, a free Infostealer monitoring solution, and I've done some other stuff which you can check out at my personal site. In this talk, we'll be talking about what an Infostealer is, why they're different from typical malware or phishing, how they work, what impact they've had, and what we can do to protect ourselves from Infostealers. For a bit of context, when I was a lot younger, I found this software called Web Browser Passview, which shows all the saved passwords on a Windows system in the web browsers. Naturally, being like 10 years old, I wanted to find out the password for my dad's laptop so I could play Minecraft whenever I wanted. So I installed it on my dad's laptop to find out the password. Sorry, Dad, this will be the first time he's hearing this. Infostealers are a lot similar to Web Browser Passview in a lot of ways. They search for sensitive data on the machine, and they send the data to a controlled server automatically. They actually started back in 2007 with a Zeus Trojan, but now popular variants include Luma, Redline, and Raccoon Stealer. And since 2019, roughly, they're often distributed through a malware as a service model, which I'll talk about a bit more later. They're usually installed through infected software, malvertising, and phishing emails. I'll go over malvertising in a moment. It's also important to note that standard phishing will often focus on a single set of credentials rather than Infostealers which focus on all of the credentials on a machine. Unlike other malware, they're usually non-persistent. It's a lot more of an automated hit and run situation than malware. Infostealers run as fast as possible to avoid detection from EDR software. They usually uninstall themselves right after scraping sensitive information from a system, so it can be harder to tell whether a machine has been compromised in the past. Malvertising is a relatively new term. Pop-ups on web pages, like the one on the left here, can prompt you to run a command on your computer, which has already been copied to your clipboard. This command is crafted to download and run an Infostealer. As you can see on the right, when pasted into the run dialog, they append some text to the end of it, so it looks more trustworthy to someone who's not too technical. This is just one method of compromise though. Infostealers are very commonly installed along infected or pirated software. So what impact have Infostealers had on the world? Infostealers are quickly becoming a very common attack vector for business compromise. In a study from earlier this year, it was concluded that 64% of medium to large businesses had at least one Infostealer infection across their organization since 2019. With these infections, criminals can perform further attacks within a business's environment. A breach of Hot Topics database happened in October 2024, 1 month after an employee with access to their Snowflake instance was infected with an Infostealer. This affected 56 million accounts, which included full names, email addresses, partial credit card details, purchases, and physical addresses of customers. This breach forums user was selling law enforcement request access through a compromised Codex Global account. With this account, it's basically possible to perform emergency data requests, which are basically subpoenas, for pretty big sites such as LinkedIn, Binance, Discord, Stripe, and Coinbase. And there's more of a list up there, but it's probably hard to read. The same user was also selling access to Facebook and Google's law enforcement request system too. A cybersecurity company identified that the access to these platforms was most likely obtained through Infostealer logs, as there are more than 50 sets of credentials for Google's law enforcement request system, which were available through Telegram group chats. Additionally, a Ticketmaster employee was infected by an Infostealer, which led to 560 million customer details being discovered by the hacking group Shiny Hunters. This data included ticket sales, partial credit card details, full names, addresses, phone numbers, and email addresses, and was then listed for sale on breach forums. There's some common problems between these breaches. Many compromised accounts lack multi-factor authentication. MFA would provide an additional layer for an attacker or a criminal to reach the sensitive data, which would, Additionally, Infostealers can affect employees' personal devices. If an employee of a business logs into sensitive accounts on their personal device, which may not have EDR software like CrowdStrike, Falcon installed. Those account credentials could then be exfiltrated by an infostealer and used to breach the business and their data. Furthermore, credentials in all of these data breaches were available to criminals for more than 30 days before the breaches surfaced. While the accounts could have been accessed earlier within those 30 days, earlier detection would have allowed a business to prepare for a data breach, maybe by deactivating the compromised account, notifying users, or force resetting the passwords of other potentially compromised accounts. I thought I'd make this slide light mode just to show you how bad light mode is. Anyway, let's dive into how infostealers work. I'm going to use Redline, one of the most prolific infostealers, as an example here. This is a screenshot of the Redline backend, which is the software is sold through a malware as a service model, meaning that anyone with little technical ability could pay for a license for this and begin infecting machines. These licenses sell for about $150 per month to $900 a month for a lifetime license. It allows a criminal to build an infostealer binary, which can then be attached to other software or provided to victims directly through phishing or malvertising campaigns. It also has automatic Telegram integration, which you can see on the right. So all of the compromised machine information can be sent to a Telegram group chat where all the criminals and their friends can then use the data. On the left is a screenshot of some logs distributed through Telegram to other criminals or researchers like myself. And on the right is a folder containing data on those compromised machines. Compromised data is usually sorted into a folder like this. Initially, the focus with infostealers was just banking details, and now it's all sorts of credentials, from Netflix accounts to corporate logins. On this, we can see every set of credentials for every site saved on the machine, all form autofill data, and every cookie stored for every site. Collecting cookies is really important because even if the account has multi-factor authentication, the session tokens can still be stolen, which can then be used to make a data breach pretty much. A file on the right here called brute is also provided, which has all of the passwords used by the user on their machine, and that can be used in a dictionary brute force attack. A list of software, processes, and system information is also found. This can be extremely helpful from a differ point of view to discover what the method of compromise was. The current clipboard is also often provided in a file, as you can see in the bottom right. This could have been used to see the command that was run by the user, or in this case, it included a mega file download link to the infected software. I did some password analysis using a sample of data from my site reseller.com. Within a sample of 10 billion infostealer log records, I found 12,000 unique New Zealand domains which had at least one infostealer infection, as well as over 1 million records on New Zealand email domains. It's important to note that for these statistics, New Zealanders using Gmail, for example, would not be included, as Gmail ends in .com rather than .nz. There's some interesting observations here, but the most worrying statistic is the one on password reuse. Over 3/4 of New Zealanders reuse password across platforms. For reference, studies generally determine that between 60 and 65% of the United States population reuse passwords, so we're especially bad at reusing passwords. Here's some screenshots from different Telegram channels showing how stolen infostealer data is sold to criminals. Prices typically range from $60 to $200 a month for access to a database of credentials from an infostealer organization. These groups also offer free samples of data, so you can see how high quality data they have before purchasing. So what can we do about infostealers? Infostealer monitoring solutions are available, which get stolen data from criminals and provide the data back to businesses. This way, if an infostealer infection is successful, businesses can find out sooner rather than later and can react by disabling compromised accounts or resetting their passwords. However, as shown before, criminals charge the money for this data, and the easiest way for companies to get access to the data is by buying it from the criminals. This means that a lot of monitoring solutions which claim to help the businesses actually fund the cybercrime that infects the machines in the first place. This is what an infostealer monitoring solution looks like. So they often show the email address impacted, the site that was accessed, the password, and other compromised machine data sometimes as well. There's also EDR. I like to thank Ethan King from Bastion, who I talked to about the endpoint detection and response side of this. Infostealers run the browser in debug mode, and credential extraction often happens within memory. So if your EDR software isn't doing memory scanning, it will miss the infostealer completely. If your EDR software is doing memory scanning, there's a solid chance, not 100%, but a solid chance that the EDR software will catch the process and hopefully kill it before it sends any information away. The window of time for EDR to catch an infostealer is very small, and only about half of EDR softwares do memory scanning. Infostealers can leave some artifacts behind. Logs can show credential store file access, browser debug mode events, non-browser processes interacting with browsers, and more. So that way you can tell if a machine has been compromised by an infostealer in the past. However, at the point of discovery of these artifacts, it might already be too late. It's also possible to prevent C2 communication through predictive DNS and domain registration analysis, which uses machine learning, statistical modeling, and real-time DNS data to flag suspicious domains. CTI solutions are also available, as well as network behavioral detection to monitor suspicious HTTP or DNS traffic. So what now? People don't reuse passwords. We're especially bad at it here, but in general, everyone does it too often. Use MFA as much as possible. This would have prevented the breaches from earlier, like the Ticketmaster one. Don't run commands or install software from an untrusted source, even if a captcha tells you to. Don't log into corporate accounts on personal devices as well. And for businesses, personal devices are now part of your security perimeter. Prepare for infostealer infections by implementing memory scanning EDR or infostealer monitoring, probably both. Implement application allow listing where possible and disable PowerShell for employees where you can. In conclusion, infostealers are quickly becoming one of the most prominent causes of business compromise. A few milliseconds can result in years of exposure if the infection isn't detected. Infostealers are unique, and we need to handle them differently from typical malware. And businesses, again, personal devices are now part of your security perimeter. I'd like to give a special thanks to Carrot for advising on this talk. I'm not sure, he'll be in here somewhere. He listened to my talk multiple times and gave great advice. Thank you so much. And Ethan King from Bastion for the information regarding EDR. And thank you for listening. Thanks.
I am a super genius.